It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day. Her name is Zellefrow. She is our academic core director here at the Institute, and she really is fantastic. I'm not going to hold this up any longer, so let's just get started.
Well, hello everybody, and thanks for joining us today. Today's work rises out of the Helene Fold Health Trust National Institute for Evidence-Based Practice in Nursing and Healthcare, where we do pride ourselves on bringing good work across all four of the cores of the fold: the clinical core, the academic core, the implementation science core, and the consumer core. Today we're actually going to be talking about, and I'm going to be sharing with you some of the preliminary results from the first national study on EBP in nursing academics. This study, so let's go ahead and dive in. As we know, there's a lot of confusion out there around EBP, and really, understandably so, right? First of all, EBP is really the new kid on the block. If we stop and think about research, QI, and evidence-based practice and how they've evolved, we've been speaking the language of nursing research for over 150 years now. Quality improvement joined the game in healthcare back in 1966 when Donna Beatty and his team brought QI processes and structures from the world of the automotive industry and brought them into healthcare. But it wasn't until the mid-1990s when evidence-based practice really came to be in nursing. In fact, the first round of the most recent, most commonly used models were developed between the mid-1990s and 2009. So if you stop and think about it, we're here at 2018. We're really only 9 years in from the most recent, from the last of the nursing models. EBP is really confusing too because there are as many different acronyms and things being called evidence-based practice or being shuffled between languages as there are professions in healthcare. We've got evidence, it started out with evidence-based medicine, transitioned to practice-based evidence when occupational therapy and physical therapy said, hey, wait a minute, I'm really creating evidence as I'm in the midst of my practice. So practice-based evidence came to evolve, and finally, evidence-based practice. Again, the other thing that causes confusion is that there are a number of different EBP models. Several of them do focus on organizational concerns or bring that into play. The ARC model that Dr. Melnick and Dr. Feina-Overholt developed is the one and only that is truly about creating organizational change. And the others are process models that help us walk through the steps of evidence-based practice. But with so many models that each have different purposes, can add to the confusion. We know there's confusion out there, though, because we have people who are talking about and using terms like evidence-based research. So stop and think about that term for a moment. Remember, the purpose of research is to develop new knowledge where gaps exist compared to evidence-based practice where we're integrating evidence into practice. So again, there's no such thing as evidence-based research. We've had instructors tell us that they're not integrating EBP into their course because it's a clinical course. Remember, though, EBP lives and needs to live everywhere in every facet of healthcare, not just in patient care, but even in administrative decisions and such. We've had faculty say the EBP assignment is that they're having their students critique a systematic review. Remember, critique and appraisal, critical appraisal, which is looking at evidence for its quality and applicability, are two different things. And again, you know there's confusion when your EBP textbook has a chapter titled Designing a Clinically Based Qualitative Capstone Research Project, one of the more popular textbooks often used in DNP programs. But permission granted to be confused, right? So let's clarify a few things before we jump into the study. First of all, I want to bring everybody onto the same page that, again, evidence-based practice is truly a lifelong problem-solving approach that brings together the best available evidence with one's own clinical expertise and patient preferences and values to create decisions that improve outcomes for individuals, groups, communities, and systems. So I'm sure that you're realizing, as I am here, that there are some issues with the slides, and please know that we will make sure that we provide a version of the slides that is complete for you guys in the CE. In the meantime, though, we need to remember that evidence-based practice is not evidence-only practice. It is about bringing together the evidence with clinical expertise and that patient voice for decision-making. This work in this study was grounded in evidence-based practice competencies that Dr. Melnick and company and our team created and published back in 2014. Remember, these were scientifically derived through DUS-5 survey methodology, and again, identified 13 competencies that all practicing nurses are held responsible for. So even if they launch into practice for this first time, they're held responsible for those. And then the additional 11 for advanced practice nurses. So regardless of where you go in healthcare these days, EBP is the word. It shows up in reimbursement language and accreditation, Magnet, the Essentials of Education, Clinical Practice Guidelines, and Policy. So let's start talking about the study and take a look at that now. So the background of the study is this all started, we started wondering about this when we first did a study back in 2016 and 17 on looking at the current state of EBP competency in nurses and across an organization. This study was published just this past January, and again, we used our 24 EBP competencies and a scale that asked nurses to self-report on that, and asked them to share with us where they felt like they were in EBP competency. We had great response to that survey. Over 2,300 nurses from 19 different hospitals and healthcare systems. And as you can see from the results of this study, as we take a look at the evidence-based practice competencies, you'll notice on the left, all the competencies are listed, but they are not listed in numerical order. They're listed in order of how competent nurses with self-reported feeling about their ability to execute each of those competencies. You may notice, too, that as you get down, if you look down 3/4 of the way or 2/3 of the way down the page, competency number 3, formulates clinical questions using PICO format, is way down on that list. Again, take some time a little later to take a look at those and see just how they are unfolded. The axis across the bottom asks nurses to rate themselves on a scale of 1 to 4, with 1 being not competent, 2 being needs improvement, 3 competent, and 4 highly competent. As you look at the colored dots, too, you might notice that even with master's and above, or master's and doctoral prepared nurses, the one and only competency that they rated themselves just above competent was that they questioned clinical practice for quality improvement. But the rest of them, they all fall between needs improvement and competent. So we started asking ourselves, if that's where nurses are, in general, are self-rating themselves, what about the faculty who have trained them and who have taught them, who have raised them? That led us to go ahead and create the first national study on EBP competency, beliefs, knowledge, and integration in nursing academics. This study, I would like to thank the other people who have been helping me with this study, my co-investigator, Dr. Melnick, Dr. Fatima Shafaza, one of our key personnel, Bindu Koshi-Thomas, who's helping us with tech support today, and our research associate and statistician, Eli Tan. This study was deemed exempt research by the IRB of Ohio State University. And the purpose of the study was really to look at where faculty, nursing faculty, rated themselves as EBP beliefs, knowledge, competency, and what were they really teaching as EBP in their courses and across educational programs. Some of the research questions we were looking at is, how do nursing faculty perceive their EBP competency? How does that perception align with their knowledge, their skills, and their attitudes? And what are nursing faculty really teaching as evidence-based practice? We used a mixed methods approach that included using a cross-sectional descriptive study for the quantitative side of things. So we had valid and reliable surveys that we used, including the EBP belief scale, the EBP knowledge acquisition questionnaire, or the EBP KAQ, that includes 5 questions developed by Amy Wonder and Daryl Spurlock, as they were developing the ECAN tools, the EBP competency scale, as well as some demographic questions. On the qualitative side of things, we also asked some open-ended questions around integration of evidence-based practice into those educational programs. These questions came from Dr. Melnick's 2008 study where she looked at evidence-based practice integration in nurse practitioner faculty. Surveys were distributed through two different ways. First of all, because of our collaborative agreement and relationship, really, with CUSIN Institute, we went ahead and we first wanted to look at the CUSIN members. This was important because we decided that we wondered how would the faculty who were engaged with CUSIN, where evidence-based practice is one of their 6 fundamental core competencies, how would those compare to the general population of faculty? So in round 2, we went ahead and distributed the survey through faculty that were accessed through the American Association of Colleges of Nurses, Deans and Directors. The Deans and Directors were kind enough to distribute the survey onto their faculty. So 2 different rounds of the study. As we did the data analysis, for the quantitative side of things, we used descriptive statistics and structural equation modeling. On the qualitative analysis side, we did that to identify themes as we asked participants to respond to questions about providing an example of an evidence-based practice assignment in one of their courses and what steps they actually incorporate into their courses. We went ahead and we asked them to do that according to the 7 steps of EBP that were developed by Melnick and Fina overall. And coding was done by 3 independent reviewers to obtain thematic consensus. So who were the nursing faculty that took part? Who were the nursing faculty that took part in this? As we took a look at them, the mean age of those faculty was 56 years old. I apologize, I'm just pulling the presentation up on another computer so I can very quickly so I can give you the details. They taught an average of 10 to 19 years with an additional large percentage in the 20-plus years. So the vast majority of them actually taught between 10 and 20 years. As you can see, over 20 years. In the meantime, too, most of them were master's and PhD prepared, although the DNPs are starting to make their way into the scene as well as their highest level of education. And no surprise, the vast majority of them were teaching in academic programs that were undergrad, followed by master's, DNP, and PhD. Forward this. Okay, oh, thanks, Bindus. So we went ahead and we pulled the competency scale. We used the same competency scale that we had with the CUSIN group and used it with the group from AACN and put those together for this particular one. So on the left side, you see the competency scale of all nurses across the United States and how they rated themselves in evidence-based practice competency, compared to, on the right, how our academics rated themselves. You'll notice the academics are feeling very confident and comfortable with where they were in evidence-based practice competency. Again, the same 4-point scale across the bottom, and again, on the left, you'll see that the competencies are ordered in the number of their comfort level. So go ahead to the next slide. So once we saw how very confident that academics were in their EBP competencies, we wondered, what about their knowledge level and how does that align? So we used the EBP KAQ. It is a 38-item questionnaire with multiple choice and true and false questions, has been tested for validity and reliability, and again, measures very fundamental EBP knowledge. So This is truly like the kindergarten or elementary school version of a knowledge test. The next couple slides depict some of the sample questions from there. So for example, things like a definition of what EBP is. And the next slide, please. What the different letters of the acronym PICO stand for. And the next slide, Cindy. Thank you. And again, basic definition of the difference between quality improvement and evidence-based practice. So as you can see, out of a possible 38, here are the mean scores with the standard deviation of faculty based on their level of educational preparation. What was interesting to me about this is notice that the gap between the associate and bachelor's prepared faculty and the PhDs and the DNPs is very small. It's less than 5 points. In fact, it's less than 4 points almost. So again, faculty at all levels, regardless of whether they were prepared at the bachelor's level or the DNP and PhD level, are really scored very, very similar on this test. Go ahead to the next page. Thanks, Cindy. If we took a look at that and we laid it out on a 10-point scale, grading scale, and graded them as we as faculty do for our students, look at where faculty would have fallen. At the very, very low B possible on the 10-point scale, and everybody else, PhD, master's, and bachelor's in the C level. If we move that down to a 7-point scale, which is often used in higher ed, you're looking at C's and D's. So little disconnect maybe between our self-reported level of competency and our knowledge. Go ahead to the next one, Bindu. Thank you. So the qualitative data analysis was based on the 7 steps of EBP according to Melnick and Finout overall. And here are those 7 steps outlined for you. For those of you that aren't familiar with the 7 steps of EBP, just a quick little note, notice that the scale, that the steps start with step 0 rather than step 1. That's because, again, we pride ourselves on being focusing on research and science to continue to test the work that we're doing. Go ahead to the next one, Vince. So with the Houston group, so with both groups, the first question we asked them was, if you teach in a program, please provide an example of an evidence-based practice assignment that you require of your bachelor's students. In the Houston group, we had 69 people who taught at the bachelor's level respond. What was interesting, though, and what you'll see as we continue to look at these pie charts, they depict in gray the number of people who clearly are teaching quality improvement, but reported that as an evidence-based practice assignment. Again, using language like TDSA cycles or language like root cause analysis and fishbone. We had, in the orange piece of the pie chart, you'll see that in this group, we had 25% of the respondents that did not use language that allowed us to even code it anywhere within the 7 steps of EBP. We couldn't tell we couldn't make any connection with the assignments that they were reporting and evidence-based practice, leaving us with 69% of the respondents to actually code their responses. Go on to the next one, please, Andrew. Thank you. So, if we take a look at the 7 steps, look at the distribution of where their assignment for students at the baccalaureate level fell. These are listed in percentages, again, but they add up to more than 100% because remember, within one exemplar, we might find somebody who said we had them create a PICO question out of clinical inquiry and then search the databases, appraise that evidence, and provide a presentation. So that's why you'll notice that, again, the numbers are in percentages, but will add up to more than 100. So look at what the baccalaureate faculty were focusing on. Step 1, which is, again, asking the PICO question, 2, searching for the best evidence, and 3, critically appraising the evidence were the most common themes that rose out of exemplars from the baccalaureate level. What I thought was really unique was look at how step 0, having clinical inquiry and wondering, trended lower than dissemination, step 6. Kind of mind-boggling. Go on to the next one. Cindy?
One second, there we go.
So again, same sort of scenario at the master's level with 5% reporting quality improvement, 31% we were unable to even code, so 64% of the respondents who taught at the master's level gave us an exemplar that we could code. Next slide, please. Thanks, Cindy. Once again, look at the distribution. It was interesting to me at the master's level how low, once again, clinical inquiry was reflected in their exemplars. And again, we have what was exciting was we see more integration of evidence into the clinical expertise and patient preferences and values. I will tell you though, across both groups and the entire study, we had an N of over 272. Out of that, only 2 people mentioned anything about patient preferences and values. However, we gave them credit if they had anything that looked like integrating clinical expertise or internal evidence into the decision-making process. So that's how step 4 will be as high as it is. But again, patient preferences and values, non-existent. Again, the DNP level, again, what was interesting here, I thought, was once again where DNPs should be the experts in EBP, 19% of faculty gave us an exemplar that was one that was clearly quality improvement. Only 39% we couldn't even code, leaving us with 42% of the respondents that we could actually code something. Next slide, please. And again, a more normal distribution of the curve. Unfortunately, this isn't a curve that we want a normal distribution on, right? So, although the good news is that every step, 0 through 6, were higher than at the master's level. Next slide, please. The second question then we asked them about that was we said, so of the 7 steps of EBP, which ones do you integrate into your courses and into your curricula? So again, you can see the distribution of the pie chart with 3% QI, 32% unable to code, and 65% gave us a response that we were able to code. Next slide. And look at the distribution here. Excited to see that in step 0 showed up more often across the board than what it had in any of the 3 levels of academic programs in their breakdown. And again, step 5, which is evaluating the outcomes, it also made a better presence. Still though, intriguingly enough, steps 1, 2, and 3 are really kind of where people have lived and invest the most energy. All right, so that was the CUSIN group. Let's go on now and compare CUSIN with the general population. So next slide, please. So you can see comparisons look very much the same with the number of, with the percentage of respondents that we were able to code or identify information in each of the categories at the baccalaureate level. You'll notice that we had more respondents in the in round 2, which is the AACN group response who taught at the baccalaureate level compared to CUSIN. Go on to the next one, please. And again, notice the difference in the distribution. In the CUSIN group, steps 1, 2, and 3 really shine at the baccalaureate level exemplars, versus there's a little wider distribution in percentages across the AACN group. Master's degree look almost identical. We'll go ahead on to the next one, Bindu. And again, the percentages at the master's level mirror one another. So again, people were on the same page. doctoral level, we had, again, we see the discrepancy between who is providing information about QI versus not able to code anything. In the general population of academics from AACN, 56% of the academics at the doctoral level, we couldn't code their exemplar. Okay, go ahead, next slide, please. And again, looking at slides, the percentages were almost identical. So next. Limitations to the study really included things like, first of all, the response rate. On the QSIN side, we distributed over 3,000 surveys, and we only got 136 back. On the AACN side, because they were distributed to the deans and directors, we weren't able to go ahead and really track how widely it was distributed, but we got 159 back on the AACN side. However, response rate was low, and part of that may have been because of the length of the survey. Including all of those tools, trying to find that balance between capturing the information we really wanted to know and placing burden on the participants, again, is kind of one of those fine lines that you sometimes have to walk. Next slide. Again, today we just gave you some teasers of the results from the study because the manuscript has not been published just yet, but things to look for in the manuscript: further qualitative analysis, including the structural, structural equation modeling and such. Additional qualitative analysis on, we asked questions on the barriers to EBP and facilitators, as well as we asked in the qualitative section what faculty need to help elevate EBP competency and implementation. So be on the lookout for that information. Next. So discussions and conclusions. Evidence-based practice really has evolved and become a core competency and an expected standard of care since the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. It's like anything else. Prior to the Affordable Care Act, oftentimes EBP lived in textbooks, lived in academia, but really wasn't being brought to life in clinical organizations. Of course, once the Affordable Care Act came into being, we really had a surge, an insurgence of evidence-based practice being brought to the clinical side of, like, once reimbursing bodies, accrediting agencies, etc., we're saying it's no longer about quality or quantity, but rather it's about quality, and you need to demonstrate that you're evidence-based. We did see, too, that there's a disconnect between the perceived EBP knowledge and competency and integration between self-report and between the exemplars and the results on the evidence-based practice knowledge acquisition questionnaire as well. U.S. faculty really bring a lot of rich experience in education, but because of the way that we were trained, oftentimes there's a lot of blending or confusion between evidence-based practice, research, and quality improvement. That's really hampering development of our future clinicians because we as faculty cannot teach what we don't know. Next slide, please. So again, faculty can't teach what we don't know, so we really need to take advantage of professional development opportunities that help provide us with appropriate EBP education, not just about what EBP is, but how to integrate it into our assignments, into our courses, and across our curricula. Oftentimes, EBP is really living there already in some of the things that we're doing, but we're just not connecting it and putting it in context for students to realize that's what we're doing. Because, again, we're still growing and figuring out how to integrate EBP as well. Sometimes, again, we do things very fragmented. And so, again, have lots of opportunities to increase not only our level of knowledge and acquisition, but our integration and our ability to teach. The other thing that we need to consider, too, is that we need to make sure as academics that we're really going ahead and applying the evidence-based practice approach to our teaching methodologies and strategies. and disseminating that work to build the body of evidence that's out there. Last, additional research is really needed in this area. So we'd love to have any of you come to collaborate, to consult with, or to again, join us in creating your own study to measure and see what you get. Next slide. Recommendations. Again, opportunities for faculty development around EBP are out there, so we need to do that. We also need to make sure to do that in order to dispel the confusion between the blending of language around EBP research and quality improvement that leaves our students and our graduates unsure of what each of those constructs is. And next slide, please. So we can no longer continue to base our practice on tradition. Again, as faculty, we have the opportunity to lead the way and to really change the dynamic of healthcare. So again, it's time, and we sit in the perfect place. EBP, as we know, will really help us to reach the quadruple aim, which not only now includes better outcomes for patients and for everybody alike, lower costs and improved patient experience, but we know from the research that's out there about the state for clinicians that we are in a period of crisis right now. We are seeing higher levels of depression and anxiety among healthcare practitioners and providers and clinicians than ever before. Suicide rates are higher among healthcare professionals than they've ever been. So we really need to start taking care of ourselves and creating situations where, again, we have the opportunity to be the best that we are, to practice at our top of license, and again, to bring outstanding care. One day it'll be all of us laying in that bed. And so, again, we need to make sure that we're preparing students not only educationally, but that we're helping them to think about taking care of themselves and teaching them those kinds of skills as they're going through our educational programs so that we can all get to the quadruple aim. So, we've got some opportunities for you. First, we would love to invite you and your colleagues to go ahead and join us in our free massive open online course, or MOOC, that we're hosting on Canvas. The course runs once a semester, and we run it for 10 weeks to try and align with the academic semester schedule. We just opened the course yesterday, and it closes on November 19th. It's asynchronous, so people can jump in and jump out as often as they want to. They can choose to do the entire course, or you're welcome to pick individual lectures. It features lectures by Dr. Melnick and Dr. Lynn Gallagher-Ford as well, our senior director here at the Fold, and each of the 6 modules lasts about an hour to an hour and a half. Again, it gives you an opportunity to engage with interprofessional clinicians from around the world. To date, we've hosted over 6,000 interprofessional clinicians from all walks of healthcare and outside of, from over 41 countries. So very fun to get in and just to learn what's going on around the world. It also includes fun and optional learning activities as well. So ways to kind of do knowledge checks along the way. Now, I will tell you that the MOOC is not available for CE, and we don't provide any kind of certificate because of the vast number of people. So, again, this is a learning opportunity and a growing opportunity. And please share it with your colleagues. Go ahead and do next slide. So coming soon, the manuscript with additional details and results from the study. We also, too, are excited and proud to have been allowed and accepted to provide a credential-bearing EBP certificate. The credentials that will come with it will be EBP-C. And so, again, the certificate is in the creation stages right now. We expect to launch it within the next 6 to 8 weeks. So stay tuned to the full website for more information about that. But a great way to go ahead and show and demonstrate your competency in evidence-based practice. The other thing that we have coming soon as well is our next Fold webinar that will be on November 10th. And we're excited and planning already for our second biannual EBP Summit that will be held November 20th to the 22nd, 2019, here in Columbus. Next slide, please, Cindy. Here's my contact information. If you have any questions or, again, are interested in exploring opportunities to integrate EBP into your courses, your assignments, your programs, if you want to talk about and explore engaging in research, or if there's anything that we at the Fold can do to help support you, that's what we're here for. Our mission is to dream, discover, and deliver a healthier world. And so, again, we're proud to be engaged in the work that we are. I want you to know, that you truly are part of a bigger conversation and a bigger movement. Over the last 4 months, I've had the opportunity to travel to 4 different continents around the world to collaborate with faculty, to present on evidence-based practice. So EBP is not a flavor of the month. It is not living in isolation. It truly is a global movement and an interprofessional movement that has the chance to really turn the tides on healthcare. As faculty, again, we touch thousands and thousands of people through the course of our career. So, again, excited to